Fortnite has released a ton of broken pistols over the last 9 years, and if you played this season at all, it shouldn't surprise you that the Ranger pistol is the most used weapon in every single Fortnite tournament. So how did Fortnite's weakest weapon become the meta? There's two different types of pistols. There's the main pistols, and then there's the secondary pistols, which are not in every single season. I'm going to cover both in this video because there's really broken examples of both of these. The first ever pistol added to Fortnite was the semi-auto pistol, and I think Fortnite did a good job balancing this in the very first season. It could deal up to 169 damage per second, but it wasn't automatic as you had to spam the shoot button to actually fire it. If we compare this to all of the other main pistols across Fortnite's lifespan, we can see that the vast majority of these deal around 175 damage per second. So the 169 of the first ever pistol was pretty close to the balance that Fortnite would keep for many years. In this season, the assault rifle was better at long ranges, dealing up to 192.5 damage per second, and the SMGs were insane at close ranges and in no way balanced with a damage per second of up to 240. This meant that the pistol wasn't the best in any one scenario, but it was viable and usable in both. This was probably the weakest pistol ever, mainly due to the actual meta that surrounded it. The first actually broken pistol to be added to Fortnite was the hand cannon, first added in Chapter 1 Season 3. Now, I've gone over this weapon in another video already, so I'll cover this item kind of quickly. This gun was insanely busted at long range, mainly because of legacy aim assist, as this had a snap-on feature that dragged your crosshair towards the opponent. All you needed to do is put your crosshair somewhere near another player, aim down the sights, and the crosshair would snap onto them, so then you just shoot. Epic Games also decided to buff the structure damage of this to 150, so it could break fully built wood walls in a single shot. But at this time, people just started to learn how to defensively box fight, and this seemed to be something that Epic Games was trying to actively avoid, so they basically created a lot of high structure damage weapons that cancelled this out. However, they did eventually nerf this down to 95, making it still strong, but definitely removing one of the main reasons why you'd pick this up. Now, Chapter 2 is before Fortnite started to do a completely new loot pool and new weapons for every single chapter. So the main pistol this chapter was the semi-auto pistol, the same one from the previous season. However, they did add a purple and gold version and buff the damage slightly. Interestingly though, this was the first time that the main pistol actually got some viability and some use in a competitive tournament. In Chapter 2 Season 3, the headshot multiplier for assault rifles and SMGs was reduced from 2 times to 1.5 times, but the pistol headshot multiplier was still 2 times, which is still the case today. So since Chapter 2, pistols have actually been the best weapon at dealing headshot damage. Now, this change actually gave people a reason to carry a pistol in tournaments, and only one person did. That person was King. Chapter 2 Season 3 was solos, and he carried the pistol in pretty much every single game of the finals. I remember thinking at the time it was weird that he mained it every single game because it wasn't an automatic weapon at this point. However, he did win FNCS maining it, so it was clearly a little bit underrated this season, or he was just using a shoot macro to make it automatic. It actually took until Chapter 4 for pistols to become automatic, and that was with the addition of the tactical pistol. By the way, if you wondered why I skipped Chapter 3 here, this is the wiki for it. Kind of empty. There's not a lot to talk about, I'll be honest. Interestingly, Chapter 4's tactical pistol had one of the lowest damage per seconds of any main pistol released up until this point, yet it was the first to actually become viable. Not only was it automatic, but it also had a really tight spread and recoil, meaning it was also very accurate. The main assault rifle was the Red Eye assault rifle, which was a hit scan scoped weapon, making it insane at long ranges, but absolutely terrible in close range. And then the main SMG was the Twin Mag SMG, which was insane at close range and pretty good at medium range, but terrible at long range. So the tactical pistol fit really well into this meta because it wasn't the best at any distance, but it was good in all of them. There's also a mythic version available through the reality augments, which boosted up the usage of this gun even more. Chapter 4 also saw the release of the Mammoth pistol. Now, in blue rarity, the Mammoth pistol dealt 94 body shot damage, and it originally had a 1.85 times headshot multiplier, but this was nerfed to 1.75 times. The Mammoth pistol was close to the Chapter 1 hand cannon in that it was slow, but it fired one big heavy hitting shot. It had the downside of only having one shot per reload, but for tournaments this didn't really matter much since you were mainly just shooting once and then hiding behind cover anyway as you reloaded. The biggest issue this gun had is that it was just incredibly easy to use with almost no downsides. With a sniper, you can set distances and ping shots at other people, which is annoying, but it's hard to hit those shots since there's bullet travel time and bullet drop. So by taking a sniper, you're taking up a valuable inventory slot that doesn't necessarily guarantee you any damage or eliminations. But since the Mammoth pistol was hit scan, it basically created a meta where people would just sit far away and ping shots at you over and over again, and almost every single one of these was close to 100 damage. In tournaments where you have players with the best aim in the world, this is not fun. Thankfully, Chapter 5 fixed this problem by adding bullet drop. Now, the main pistol in this chapter was the Ranger pistol, which is currently the one that is dominating Chapter 7 right now. However, it wasn't really that powerful back in Chapter 5. It has been buffed slightly in the last 2 chapters, but back then it had a very similar damage per second as most of the main pistols that came before it. Now, in Chapter 5, because every weapon had bullet drop, the Reaper Sniper became much stronger in the meta since every gun was hard to use at long ranges. The main assault rifle was the Striker assault rifle, which had a really fast fire rate and tight spread, making it really good in close and medium ranges too. The Thunderburst SMG could also be modified to have 0 spread when moving and jumping, making it by far the best weapon to fight with. So despite the Ranger pistol being a solid weapon and being very viable, it wasn't the meta because it wasn't the best in any one scenario, similar to how the Chapter 1's semi-auto pistol worked. This chapter also had the Monarch pistol, which was basically a toned down version of the Mammoth pistol, but the bullet drop made this gun much more skillful and less frustrating. Thomas HD mained this at the FNCS Global Championships, where he and Queasy placed second, and their surge strategy was basically a lot of surge trading and a lot of hitting every shot with a Monarch pistol. If you're enjoying this video, please like and subscribe to make sure you get to see my next upload as well. In Chapter 6, Fortnite unvaulted the suppressed pistol as the main pistol, which, unsurprising, it was basically the same as every pistol that came before it. But this chapter, they went hard on the wacky and creative pistols. In Season 3, they added the Hyperburst pistol and the Kill Switch revolvers. Now, I absolutely loved the Kill Switch revolvers, and I really wish that I saw more pros come up with sick tech with them, as the slow-mo jumping mechanic that they had was so sick, but unfortunately, they just weren't really that good in competitive. The Hyperburst pistol was actually really solid, but similar to previous pistols, it just wasn't really good enough to be better than the main assault rifles, which were the Spire rifle or the Fury assault rifle. However, the exotic version of this, which was the unstable voltage burst pistol, had a ton of use in tournaments. The first and final shot in every magazine shot a small shockwave effect, which could be used as mobility, which hilariously became really strong in competitive blitz on mobile, as the final zone deals 40 damage per second, so people were just using this gun to fire people out into the storm. However, the main broken pistol from Chapter 6 was, of course, the Wrecker Revolver. Now, in close range, it was like a tactical shotgun, but by aiming down the sights, the crosshair tightened, and it could be used more like a combat shotgun, or, more like a revolver. By itself, it wasn't super overpowered, but because it was classified as a pistol, you could double pump between this and a shotgun. On release, you could actually double pump between 2 Wrecker Revolvers, so the meta was just to carry 2 of them. But Epic Games fixed this by adding a delay when you swap between 2 Wrecker Revolvers. It's actually added a delay when switching between the Wrecker Revolver and any other pistol. And most players were carrying the Sentinel Pump and then the Wrecker Revolver and switching between the 2 of these. And the Sentinel Pump deals a ton of structure damage. So if you make a bad edit, they would shoot you. If you made a good edit, they would just shoot the wall and replace it due to the high structure damage of the Sentinel Pump. If you didn't edit, they would just pump the wall and then switch to the Wrecker Revolver straight away, and the cycle would repeat. Even worse, if players did edit, they were just 50-50 with you all the time, because they knew if they had good aim, they could just wipe you out with a couple of shots with the Sentinel and then switching to the Wrecker Revolver. The final broken pistol of Chapter 6 was the Mr. Blasty, which was in the Simpsons season. Now, this wasn't quite as powerful as the Mammoth pistol, but you could still two-shot someone by shooting them in the head. And given that this was a hit scan weapon, you could just sit in third party every fight from 100 meters away, with every body shot hitting for over 50 damage. This was really annoying. Unsurprisingly, this became the fighting meta, similar to the Wrecker Revolver in the previous season, and there probably would have been more people complaining about this weapon if the season had gone on for longer than a month. The exotic version of this was also the best weapon in that meta, as it attached a balloon to other players when it was shot near them. This meant that you could shoot it near someone and just send them into the sky, and then there was a free target. Or you could shoot it into your own box and use it to rotate yourself. Now, Chapter 7 is where the main pistol has finally just become the meta. Season 1 was the tactical pistol, is the same as Chapter 4. Season 2 was the creatively named pistol, a brand new weapon. And then in Season 3, you have the ranged pistol, the Chapter 5 pistol. However, it is now hit scan. Now, looking at the damage, you can see that there's been an increase in damage per second of these weapons, going from averaging around 175, now up to 190 damage per second. However, increasing the damage per second by around 10% doesn't just immediately make these weapons broken and the meta. There's a lot more that actually goes into it, including accuracy. The semi-auto pistol has a ton of randomness. You can see the crosshair gets very large when you start spraying. The semi-auto suppressed pistol does not have this, it's much more accurate. The sidearm pistol, as you can see, has tons of recoil. Same with the combat pistol. Same with the tactical pistol, just a little less. Despite having the lowest damage per second, the hyperburst pistol is actually insanely accurate. But then if you look at the Chapter 7 Season 2 pistol, it barely has any bloom and any randomness either. And then basically the same thing's true with the Ranger pistol. However, the only downside is that it doesn't have first shot accuracy, but it basically still does, because it's still incredibly accurate. So despite there being some accurate pistols throughout Fortnite's lifespan, it's clear older pistols had significantly more recoil and spread, and the modern Chapter 7 pistols are easier to hit shots with than ever. There's also a very odd meta right now, which makes the pistol even better. The 3 different assault rifles, the Chaos Exploder, the Warforged assault rifle, and the Surgical Burst pistol, all have worse damage per second than the pistol. I mean, the Chaos Exploder's damage per second is 85 in comparison to 189 of the tactical pistol. So the Ranger pistol has the highest damage per second at range, is the most accurate weapon, and is the only weapon to have a 2x headshot multiplier. So it's unsurprising that it's become the meta.
Thank you. I was just about to upload this video, and then I saw this, not the cat. There's a mythic now, and I'm sure that will be super balanced.
However, there is one other weapon that's better than it in every other way, and that is the lancehead pistol. Now, you might have seen a lot of pros carrying this recently, and that's because it actually deals 231 damage per second, which is 22% higher than the Ranger pistol. Now, the main downside of this is that it's not automatic, so when you're looking at the damage per second, you do have to keep in mind that you have to spam your fire button over and over again, making it much more difficult to use, in particular, more clunky for box fighting. The Mythic has a damage per second of 269.5. Off the top of my head, I genuinely don't know if I've seen a weapon that has a higher damage per second than that. I will edit it in as I'm recording this. Almost nobody used this in the first week, but all of a sudden, 2 weeks later, tons of the best players in the world are using the lancehead pistol. And I imagine this is because people have realized that they don't get banned for macroing the fire button. And personally, I think that is cheating. But if you want to see the evolution of cheating in competitive Fortnite, because there's a lot, you can click on that video on screen right now. Bye!